Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this In the Spotlight with me, your host, Seamus Corry, wellbeing consultant and mental health practitioner. It's wonderful to have you along today to listen into this episode. And you know, it's Friday, and I feel so grateful today. The sun is shining outside. It's very hot. It's very warm today, and it's going to be warm for the weekend. So I'm grateful for the summer sunshine. I'm also grateful for all of you who have listened into my episodes, have subscribed to my channel, and have also left me comments on what you've listened to. So I really am really grateful and appreciative of all of you. If you do have a YouTube channel or a YouTube account, I'd really recommend you subscribe today and follow me for all regular updates as I'm posting new content almost on a weekly and fortnightly basis. And please do follow. And if you've got friends or family who are interested in real conversations with real human beings about real subjects, get them to subscribe too. Anyway, enough of the marketing, down to business. And it's my pleasure, honor, and privilege to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, this episode, an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, a business founder, a wellbeing consultant, and mental health awareness practitioner like myself, a business nominee, ladies and gentlemen, that we'll get to, and a wonderful shining light in the northeast of Scotland there in Aberdeen. And it's my pleasure, honour and privilege to welcome to In the Spotlight this morning, Leanne Ross, my colleague and friend. Leanne, good morning. How are you? And welcome to In the Spotlight. How's the weather in Aberdeen?
Oh, good morning, Seamus. Thanks so much for that introduction. I just feel on top of the world now. So great way to start a Friday. The sun is also shining in Aberdeen. It is absolutely beautiful. So I've scheduled a half day today. So I'm going to be heading up to the Highlands of Scotland, barbecue, drinks, all things well-being. So that
well jealous today. I've scheduled an eye test for 12 o'clock today, so that's my rock and roll well-being activity for this afternoon. So Highlands and Islands and barbecue, eye test. I see where the chips are laid today. So that's absolutely wonderful, Leanne. Leanne, I know you and I have known each other now for a while, and we work in the same space of wellness and mental health. And I wanna firstly shout out Albert Atkins and Rudy Abraham of the Founders Network Group, who just brought us together so wonderfully through their own foundation and network that they've built and created. So I really want to shout out them today, Leanne. But for those, and I know you, and I've got to know you over the last few months, but for those who may not know you and want to know more, would you mind telling us who Leanne Ross is? Yeah.
Sure, of course, absolutely. So, so I have a business called Happylieuya Coaching, or HL Coaching for short, and I primarily support people and businesses with workplace well-being. So I can go in and support businesses with that. I adopt a 5-pillar approach. I also sort of do some work around trauma intervention as well, and it's really supporting businesses to have almost that return of investment when they're investing in well-being.
Absolutely.
You both know how important that can really be for the workplace. And I also work with individuals who are maybe struggling with workplace stress and general life and, sort of stressful life events as well. I work with kind of a number of different individuals as well in that area. So that's me really.
Wonderful. How and we all have had a journey to take to get to where we are now. So what led you to create your own wonderful wellness business, Leanne?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate that I've got sort of a number of different professional experiences, qualifications. I worked in social work and management. I was a trauma trainer. I did some counselling, so all that good stuff. But what I found was when I was in the workplace, no matter where I worked, whether it was in hospitality, whether it was in social work, or whether it was in senior management, I always found that I was burnt out.
Mm.
And I always found that I would just put my all in the workplace, and it was always to the own detriment of myself,
Mm.
always sacrificing my personal life for my professional life. And I reached a point where I felt that I just needed to break free of that patterns of behavior. Um, and a significant incident happened to me where I was feeling really unwell one day at work, but I continued to push through. That's what I did. I just kept pushing through no matter how I felt. And very long story short, I ended up in hospital 3 days later with an appendicitis. Um, which had almost burst, because I had just completely disconnected from that real feeling of feeling normal and feeling well.
Mm.
And then afterwards, I promised myself, right, near death experience, that needs to change my life. And it didn't, Seamus, it really didn't. So that really helped me to understand that well-being's on a much deeper level. It's embedded within our thinking, our perceptions of ourselves, our perceptions of the world, our own experiences, which led me down this just amazing path around well-being. And I just became so passionate and empowered. I felt I need to share this secret with the whole world, and help
Absolutely.
who were like me.
Absolutely. And when we find ourselves going through, and my own story, and I've had a similar experience myself, not once, not twice, but 3 times in terms of pivoting and from burnout. Is it as human beings we're slow learners, or we're so wired in, Leanne, that we believe we're human doings and forget the human being side of our nature?
I love that. I love that question. I think definitely I think for me, there's a lot of kind of cultural pressures,
Mm.
you have to be hardworking. And if you want to be successful, you need to work for it. And in order to feel deserving of having, a good career, you need to have almost that badge of honor of, I've worked 60 to 80 hours a week, and, I've given up my whole life for my career, and
Mm.
definitely wore burnout as a badge of honor, and it was almost to prove something, not only to others, but to myself, that I was deserving of this career that I'd worked for. But when I got it, I realized it actually wasn't what I wanted, because I was absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you. I think we can get really caught up in the doing rather than being, and being fully present.
Mm. And it's almost sometimes, and I knew at my worst moments, I felt guilty for taking time off, right? What's that about? I felt guilty for taking time away.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was totally the same. I'm a lot better now. But
Mm.
I used to do was write a list of justifications around why I needed to take time off.
Wow.
And with clients I work with, I get them to do it. And it's really funny because you end up with this big list, but we both conclude the conversations with why was that even necessary? Like, it helped to justify, but why do we need to justify?
Justify, yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. It's almost like we have to prove to ourselves that, yeah, we've worked so hard, but and here's the reason we need to take time off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you say, it's that kind of that evidence we're looking for of, okay, how can I prove that, I'm worthy of taking this time out, and deserving of feeling good about myself, and deserving taking time out of, work and enjoying life. And, that's what life's about. It is about enjoying, what we have. And of course, people are really career driven, but it should never be the sole focus, because when I only focused on my career, everything just fell apart and I wasn't happy. So you need to have that balance, don't you?
You absolutely do, and I'm finding more and more that as the downward pressures increase on people, the more the talking about and the hearing about wellness gets kind of pushed to the periphery, in terms of conversation. And I know I beat the drum almost on a daily basis in terms of, keeping wellness to the fore, keeping wellness to the front of what we do, because you know yourself, having worked with clients in Aberdeen and in the northeast of Scotland, that when you focus just on one thing, when you focus on productivity, when you become the sum of your total, you know, when you become defined by your output rather than who you are as a human being, then you lose yourself in that cycle, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so easy to do.
Mm,
I use the Wheel of Life. So kind of it's got like 8 dimensions and it focuses on like career, your social life, your physical life, mental health and well-being, and
mm.
all these different areas. And quite often people just hone in on the career and they forget to talk about their social life and their environment and how they feel all about that. And as you say, quite often it's the career that's hyper focused on and everything else is almost forgotten about.
Yeah, do you think it's the culture we're in as well? Because it's a 24-hour day, 365 day a year culture now, isn't it? Where, like, you're too young to remember, Leanne, because you're only a young thing. But when I was growing up, everything kind of switched. There was a time in the day when everything kind of switched off. Our TV switched off, our radio switched off, and we had that period of time where there was no news, there was no noise, there was no music. But now we live in a technological society where we're getting our stimulation 24 hours a day, aren't we? Really? And how do we remove it? How do we possibly live within that or work within that in a way that makes sense but also improves our well-being?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for me, there's that increase of sort of that immediate gratification of,
Mm,
we need hard hits, we need, quick bursts of fulfillment, so social media ties into that.
mm.
Um, and as you say, kind of the technology as well. I remember when my parents first got internet, it would take me about 5 minutes to connect to the internet. So you would go and get yourself a cup of juice and, nip to the toilet and get yourself.
Read the paper, yeah, yeah, eat your dinner, and then you might be lucky to have one page loaded, right?
Absolutely. And it was connected to the phone line. So you couldn't stay on
Or
for hours because you had to free up the phone line in case people were phoning the house. So there's this huge thing around how it was almost what am I trying to say? Like we were only able to stay on, online for a certain amount of time.
mm,
It wasn't that kind of immediate internet loading pages or anything like that. And I think that can really affect well-being now because the world is so much more fast-paced. We feel we need to keep up with that and we feel that we need to be available all the time. And there's that whole notion around the right to disconnect, the right to be able to log off and not take work calls out with your working hours, and feeling able to schedule in regular breaks. But I think moving online and a lot of kind of workplaces being remote is really challenging. It really can affect well-being.
yeah, I know. I've worked with some clients in the past where I've been in rooms with people and I said, look, we need to take time to disconnect from our phones and disconnect from social media. And the faces of some people in that group was like, oh my God, do you think you're disconnecting an artery or taking a limb off people, right? Because it was so painful for them to spend 5 minutes away from their phone.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy because it's true. It's really accurate.
Yeah.
You know, and you see that when you go out to restaurants, where there's two people sitting opposite each other and they're just,
Yeah.
whilst I have a rule where, I put my phone in my bag, I turn it on silent,
Yeah.
and ever see me, Seamus, in a restaurant and I'm not doing that, reminds me, because I
Well,
need to slip back into that.
yeah, it's so easy, and I know, like, hospitality. Some restaurants are getting really cheesed off with people using mobile phone because it's distracting the whole ambience and people enjoying themselves and having a lovely, relaxing time having dinner. So some restaurants now are offering, free bottles of wine if you leave your mobile phone at reception, just like you did your jacket back in the 70s and 80s, right? When you took your jacket off and left it at reception. Now there's these little boxes where you can leave your mobile phone and you get a ticket and you pick it up at the end of your meal. Yeah.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. And I would be there with bells on if there was a restaurant giving out free wine.
100%. I mean, it is a challenge, right? And we're not sitting here today saying we're perfect and we're spotless in terms of our credentials, in terms of our own wellness, because it's a journey, right? It's a progression, and you and me have been on paths where it's taken us to the brink in terms of our wellness and mental health, and we've worked our way back from that. But I think for me, and I don't know how it is for you, Leanne, but I think for me, when you've been there and done that, our responsibility becomes sharing that information with others, right? So that others don't have to go that same path.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's that accountability, isn't it? We
Yeah.
be practicing what we preach. And, you know, I always say that you're a trailblazer, Seamus, because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. And I think it's so amazing to have examples of people who are spreading the word and who are, using their messaging in such an amazing way to ensure that people are actually having a real understanding around well-being in the workplace and what that can look like, and also what it can look like if there's a lack of well-being in the workplace and how that can impact people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so spreading that word so key. It literally can and will change lives.
Absolutely. And the more of us that work within this space, Leanne, like you and I, and the more of us that continue to spread that message, and the more that messaging will become impacted in terms of people's daily lives. Um, I was reading something the other day where there's a real focus on wellness in the workplace, and it's not just focused on um, fruit baskets. And it's not just focused on gym sessions, or it's not focused on yoga sessions, but it's more to do with giving staff time to catch up themselves,
That
which is an interesting switch. And there have been so many trends in wellness and well-being, over the past 5 years, particularly. I think it's really changed a lot over 5 years. But in the most recent research, it's saying that by giving staff, yoga sessions, or taking staff away from their work, actually creates more pressure. And what staff actually need is the time to catch up, is the flexibility to catch up with themselves, with others, and those they live and work with, which is interesting. So it's like, and I don't know for you, Leanne, but for me, there's a lot of talk around flexibility of work and hybrid working, and we've mentioned it already, and our fluid working, or creating spaces where people can both have their cake and eat it, really, to be honest. Be able to create some space for themselves, but also be more productive, because it's been proven that when you create spaces like that, people in turn actually become more productive, right?
absolutely. And I totally buy into that. I think, I used to do a work with a union.
Mm.
Quite often, flexible working agreements were really key to supporting people to remain in the workplace.
Workplace,
There's
yeah.
medical conditions that needed catered for, but in terms of well-being, we had, parents who had worked and managed their childcare throughout the pandemic, and then were expected to just move all of that and then go straight back into the workplace, and the stress of managing all of that, and
Mm.
really reflecting on what's actually reasonable, and how can we move forward throughout not only the COVID pandemic, but this burnout pandemic. How can we move forward and be creative around how we can do it effectively? So is it a case of hybrid working? Is it a case of allowing people protected time to catch up with their work? Because it's so key. And I'm a lover of yoga. I love going to potty classes and all that well-being stuff that we can do. But I remember when I was in management, I was so overwhelmed. I was so burnt out. I couldn't even take time off work because I would end up working because I just had so much to do. So I remember phoning my boss and telling him about it. And we agreed that I would work for 2 days, but put my out of office on. And that was just a godsend to have that 2 days of protected time to get all my stuff done. And then able to take, I think it was a week off after, and I was able to switch off because I wasn't constantly thinking about work. I was able to focus on my well-being because, as you say, I was given that time to just actually catch up. And that was the best thing that could have been, given to me for my well-being at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been borne out in the research that's been carried out. That's what people are looking for, and that's what's in very short supply at the moment is time, right? Is time, and how we manage our time and work our time, and what we do in our time is vitally important. And you're right. It's certainly for me. You see some organizations and some companies, and particularly prevalent in the States at the moment, where there's a hard shift to return to, the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You sit at your desk, you have your 2 hour commute in the morning, you have your 2 hour commute in the back. You're doing 40 hours a week. That's where America is going at the moment. And it's creating no end of anxiety and stress. And you're right. I think you're absolutely right, Leanne. I think you hit it on the head. I think we're in the middle of a continuous burnout crisis at the moment, where people are saying enough is enough.
Yeah,
The bodies, minds, and spirits are done, right?
absolutely. And I think, the political climate right now is of great detriment to well-being because, as well as kind of the burnout pandemic and that kind of push to that traditional kind of 9 to 5, where overtime is also expected, and that longer commute is also expected. We have those kind of almost like that clash of values that are coming out right now as well, that's affecting well-being, around people being mistreated, people not being supported in the way that they deserve to be. There's discrimination, there's inequality. And I think all of that really can encompass a poor well-being on a global scale. Because certainly, I've got a lot of American friends where we quite often talk about the political climate in America. But even in Britain, I'm hearing people talk about the challenges of just witnessing it, and I think moments like that is where, people like herself, Seamus, do need to kind of step up and really kind of hold that, hold that space and be able to really support people through these really challenging times. And I always say it's kind of combating it in a way that's meaningful. We can't fight hate with hate. We need to fight hate with love and compassion and empathy and kindness and well-being as a whole.
Absolutely, and it encompasses all that. I read something really beautiful yesterday, and it's my great friend and colleague Dana Sardano who's wrote the 10 Recommendments for Personal Empowerment, and it's a wonderful book. If you get the opportunity, and I really recommend the book. But she's an artist, and she's a painter, and she says, if you've only got black and white, you miss all the other colors. And our role, I think, is to open people's vision to seeing the other colors in their life, right?
Yeah, I just got goosebumps. I'm going to have to read that book. But
It's a powerful book, and she makes the point quite validly that when we're so polarized, when we're so fixated on right or wrong, black or white, we just miss we just miss so much more in life.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, or like when we're so focused on work that we miss home, and we miss our friends, and we miss our family, and we miss our lives, and we miss what's going on, and we miss that greater kaleidoscope, which is our life. Like, because our work is not our life, right?
Yeah, you're so right. And sometimes it's the little things that I notice more because I am just a bit more present and
Mm,
more focused on my well-being. And I love supporting other people to feel the same. And it's funny because I was speaking to sort of a business connection, business friend the other day, and they were saying, like, what's one of your favorite things about being in business? And it's such a silly example, but I was like, having a hot coffee in the morning,
yeah,
because I'm so used to being so busy. My first cup of coffee would be cold because I was so all over the place and trying to do a million things at once. I never actually took 5 minutes to sit and have that hot cup of coffee. So now every morning when I take my first sip, I'm like, oh, my life feels just amazing. And that's
yeah.
the whole thing, but it's something that, can help us just remind ourselves around the importance of well-being and the importance of just being present and immersing ourselves in all of that color rather than just that almost corporate black and white lifestyle.
Absolutely. And in terms of the work that you do, I mean, you've spoken about your trauma support and the wellness work that you do. How do you, Leanne, support somebody to forget about the past and not worry about the future, but very much concentrate on the present? That must be a struggle for some people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for my coaching style, it's very much person led. It's always kind of client driven. But I think quite often it's a bit of a process. So I
Mm,
go five-pillar approach of empowerment, getting that life balance right, um, mindset work, stress management, and then goal setting. And a lot of that is focused on sort of the past and unpicking that and looking at the future around, okay, that comparison of what do you want to move towards.
mm,
But when we do that work, then we're able to focus on the present and engage in almost that mindfulness living around, okay, what does today look like? What do you actually need?
mm.
In order to have a day that you want to have. And it's about really kind of peeling all that layers back and looking into those kind of golden nuggets that are really significant to kind of building that bigger life.
Mm. Yeah, so it's building those little incremental steps and that add to the sum total of people's lives, that they have been so driven and so busy and so worked out that they've forgotten it. I remember I spoke to a client only last week, and it's a client I've been supporting for some time, and the client said that they had forgotten the tools in their tool bag, that they when we when we sat and did a session together, they remembered that they had this tool that they could work on, or they could, go to somebody for help, or they could spend time away from their desk, or and it's just constantly, I think, I don't know how it is for you, Leanne, but it's constantly for me reminding people of they have that sense of empowerment themselves, that they have these internal tools that they can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And recognizing that as well and recognizing the progress and celebrating with people. I had a client who's she really struggles disconnecting. So at her
Yeah.
lunch, on her lunch break, she will still sit and, tap away on her laptop. So she said, oh, I want to kind of figure out a way of doing that. And one session she said, oh, I only went for a 5 minute walk, but I was planning an hour. And I was like, well, let's celebrate the fact that you actually were able to take yourself away from that laptop
Mm,
outside and go out for that 5 minute walk. And framing it that way, where she felt empowered, the fact that she had taken that 5 minutes led to her building that app. And, now she's still working on it, but she's able to take more time out and feeling deserving of that. So I think empowerment and supporting people to see things a little bit differently is really key.
Yeah, yeah, and that is the wonderful work that we do. That's the space in which we inhibit, and that we create that space for people to allow them see, the greater kaleidoscope of the little wins that they might not even be conscious of on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I call them champagne moments. So it's like, what's your champagne moment of the day? And
Mm,
I'm like, okay, that means you've got to list five, because it's really about kind of immersing yourself in those little small moments of success, because there will be some throughout the day, and it's about kind of capturing them, and that then helps to shift the mindset, and it helps to really buy into kind of that well-being lifestyle that we're all really trying to encourage each other to live.
absolutely, absolutely, and it requires a little bit of consistency, doesn't it, in terms of the approach. It's only going to work when we're consistent in terms of our approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you see this as well, Seamus, but sometimes you'll get maybe someone coming for maybe one session and they'll be like, okay, great, I feel that's me.
Wonderful. Yeah,
But it's the clients that show up consistently time and time again that always end up with the biggest success stories, because they're working on their consistency levels or alongside us.
yeah, absolutely. I can see, Leanne, why your business has been nominated for a business award, which is wonderful. And how long have you been in business now with Happylieuya Coaching?
Oh, thank you. 3 years, just over
Wow,
3 years. Um,
wow.
and it's changed, a little bit. I've kind of been really reflective around where I want my business to move to and how I can really support people on an intimate level.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I was so excited when I was nominated. It was such a shock, and it was anonymous. So I would love to know who nominated me. But it was just, yeah, a real privilege.
So if you're out there and you're listening to this episode today, it might be an opportunity just to leave a comment in the commentary box underneath. Just let us know who you are, because you've made Leanne Stain. You've given her a champagne moment, a champagne year, really, to be honest, which is wonderful. What's the next steps in terms of the nomination, Leanne? Does it shortlist, or do you vote, or what happens? Where can people vote for you?
Yes, so I'm waiting for an email with that update, but I'll be sure to let you know. I'm not sure if it goes to a panel, I'm not sure if it goes to public vote, but yeah, any support would be greatly appreciated, because it would just be nominated is such a privilege, but winning would be incredible.
If somebody's listened to this today, Leanne, that is really struggling, what what are the key things that they can do straight away to maybe lessen the load, or take a little bit of pressure off, or seek some help, or signposting or support? What would you recommend?
Yeah. So there's so many different things, but I think really reflecting on what you want your world to look like, you
Mm.
know, and really reflecting on what's lacking, what's missing, what's maybe not going right for you. And for me, I really tried to do it myself. And absolutely, I feel I've done well supporting myself to an extent, but it's about reaching out for that specialized support, and having that person that can really guide you to to that life. And I think mindset is everything. They say 80% is mindset, 20% is action. So
Mm.
what's one small step, one micro mini step that you feel that you can take today to give you a better tomorrow? And that will help to kind of just build that in a way that's not only intentional but meaningful as well.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It's a series of small steps. I mean, it's the old Chinese proverb, every journey begins with a single step. I can't remember who said it. if it was a Japanese proverb or a Chinese proverb, but I think, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? And you're absolutely right. It's about putting that small step in front of another. And it might be difficult and it might be a struggle, but if you take it and celebrate it and have a champagne moment, then tomorrow's another day and you can take another step, and slowly over time, with momentum and consistency and ongoing support, either internal or external, your wellness will improve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a program and sort of a podcast that's called Turning Moments into Movements. And it is those like little mini steps that do lead to bigger changes. And, I'm sure we've both been at points, Seamus, where we've thought, oh my gosh, like I feel so overwhelmed with the amount of stuff I feel I need to do to feel better and well.
Mm.
But it's little steps that really help to build that. It's that kind of almost that analogy of climbing a mountain. It's, as you say, it's just that first step, focusing on that first step rather than focusing on, oh my gosh, how high is that mountain? How on earth am I going to get up there?
Yeah, and I use the analogy a lot in my own work in terms of the Sherpas who walk up and down Everest, right? They walk differently to the rest of humanity because they take a series of small steps because they're lifting such heavy loads, right? But they take incremental small steps, and it might take them a wee bit longer to get there, but they'll take their time and be consistent in terms of the approach, and watch their elevation and watch the altitude, and they've been doing it for such a long time now that they've developed a practice and developed an awareness, but they've also acclimatized themselves to the different conditions that high altitude climbing may present to them. And I think it's the same for us. It might feel clunky at the start, and it might feel awkward at the start, and it might feel weird at the start, right? When you start to maybe think less about work, but more about you. But over time, as you build a consistent practice and approach to that, and as you build those champagne wins into your program, then it does culminate in uh, uh, um, that new mindset and that new belief that actually you get to a point where there's a almost like, do you remember the dynamos that used to be on the bikes that used to generate the lights? So you'd have a dynamo on your back wheel. Again, maybe you're too young for that, Leanne. But when I was young, I had a dynamo on my bike, and you had to move the wheel so many times in order to keep the light on the bike lit. And it's the same. In order to keep our light burning, we have to move that dynamo, right?
Yeah, and I love that analogy. I'm such
You
a big,
can
I love that.
you can have that. You can have that one for free. Yeah,
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, you're right. It's just that continuation of keeping on going. And, sometimes our best will look different on different days. Um, if you're feeling, particularly tired, sometimes your best is getting up, having a shower, and giving yourself the permission to relax for the rest of the day. Other times it will be to have a whole, list of well-being tasks that you've done, that make you feel good, so
absolutely,
that continuation and chipping away at it.
absolutely. Leanne, where can people find you?
Yes. So I have a website. I'm on all socials other than X, and I've also got my own podcast. So all of it is under the handle Happylieuya. So that's spelled Happylieuya. So yeah, make sure you connect. We'd love to kind of organize any virtual coffees. Yeah, and I release daily content on social. So yeah, just kind of make sure you're staying tuned.
Leanne, thank you ever so much for taking the time out this morning. I know, you're running fast to your half day because, the Highlands away for you this afternoon, which is wonderful. But I want to wish you well, and I know, you have not only my support but the support of all those who listen as well, Leanne, who share this space with me, and you know we are part of a kind of synergistic family, and you're very much part of that family. And I want to know that you do, we do see you and you're supported. And at times it can be a struggle, but we're there to reach out and support one another, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate that. And I think, as mentioned, having yourself, Seamus, who has been in this field, for longer and is able to give that kind of that guidance and that encouragement is so key. Everyone says like it takes a village to support, that one person. So having, the likes of yourself in my kind of a support network is so valued to me. I really appreciate it.
And likewise, to have somebody whose light is very strong there in the northeast of Scotland, lighting the lamp for wellness and positive mental health, and shifting mindset is crucially, and you know and I wish you well as you continue that endeavor. I wish you well for what's going to come this afternoon, and travel safe to the Highlands and enjoy your wonderful weekend away. And thank you for joining us today on In the Spotlight.
Thank you again. And I've really loved being on. It's just been such a privilege. So thanks again, Seamus.
You're welcome, my friend. You're welcome. Have a great day.